Welcome to another edition of Talk City Greensboro, produced by GTN, featuring interviews and events happening around town. It's an easy way to stay in the know while you're on the go. Subscribe to Talk City on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or SoundCloud so you can keep up with what's going on in Greensboro city government and beyond. I'm your host, Carlos Castellanos, today, and joining me is Rosemary Plyden.
Hello. North Carolina's first and only Women's Holocaust Monument is under construction now. This symbol to the strength and resilience of all women will stand in LeBauer Park and will serve as a place for remembrance, reflection, understanding, and social engagement. Victoria Milstein is the artist behind the project. Welcome.
Hello. Good to see you both.
Great to see you. So this really goes back, and we really have to go back to 1941, Lapija, Latvia. Tell us what happened there.
There was a village, in this beautiful village with a very large Jewish community, and the Nazis took over the village. And this particular incident was so hideous. There were days and days of killing, and this one particular day they rounded up all the women and the children. And they took them on a march to a prison and then marched them to a beachfront. And there at the beachfront, they asked the women with their children to strip. There was a Nazi photographer who had a whip, and he posed the children and the women, asked them to strip, and then he photographed them. It was called exhibition tourism, and it was to proclaim the Reichs, what they were doing to bring it all over Germany so that they could see. And people would come actually to view these mass killings. And these women and children were photographed, and then they were brought to a pit, and then, of course, they were shot, and then another Nazi kicked the corpse down into a big ditch. The thing about this is, first of all, they were women and children. We're not talking about war or, soldiers. This is innocent civilians. Their only crime were that they were Jews.
Not a
crime.
crime.
They were Jews.
Not a crime.
And Jews, Syrians, our African-American brothers and sisters, all of the communities of women and children that have been genocide for the fact of their race or their religion or their culture. Jewish people, we could consider ourselves a tribe. We're a peoplehood. We're not just a religion. Mm-hmm. You can be a French Jew, an Ethiopian Jew. You can be a Persian Jew. You can be as Arabic and as Jewish and as French and as Jewish as you can. But what we're finding is that being a Jew has been consistently a problem. It has been there's been anti-Semitism and racial killing of Jews really since the Roman times. So this incident hit me strong. I had been on a trip to Poland with the Jewish Federation of Greensboro. Rabbi Fred Gutman takes adults and children to Poland, and I had visited the camps in Poland. And 30% of the camps in Poland were women. Mm-hmm. And women had a particular horrible and gruesome incidents in the camps and through the Holocaust because they had children, and they were also raped, everything that you can think of, horrible things. And I remember walking through the camp of the women and hearing their stories, and it's like I heard their voices. Mm-hmm. I was with 10,000 people who were then flying to Israel, to a place where Jews from every walk of life can be free, to have a home. And I remember thinking, it was like this switch in my mind. Had they known there'd be in Israel, had they known there would be 10,000 people marching, had these women had any inkling their voices could be heard. And I just decided that moment that I had to do a body of work that had to do with the women in the Holocaust, and particularly the journey of the women and the children. Mm-hmm. So then I came home to Greensboro, and I had been researching it, and I came across a picture of these women from Lapija, Rosa, all of them. They have names, They were not just anyone. They were people. They were human beings. And when you see the photograph of them, the whole thing is that you're seeing a photograph out of the eyes of a Nazi soldier. So I wanted you to see them through your eyes. Mm-hmm. So I thought, why don't I do a sculpture so that when everyone would view them in history, they would view them through the eyes of our eyes, the eyes of seeing them as human beings, not as insects or as venom that they have to destroy, that the Nazis saw them that way, as inhumane. So that's how I kind of came across. And I actually did a TED Talk where I kind of unveiled the idea. So my journey is always about Greensboro because it's really a city where I've had the opportunity to do the work that I've wanted to do and been inspired by our community and all of our leaders and people like you, Rosemary, and the work that you do. I mean, we have the strongest women leaders in this community. So I started this journey of having a Holocaust monument in North Carolina. The statistics are pretty grim. I think I don't want to quote numbers, but it's something like 1 out of 25 Americans don't know that I have to get the statistics, but the Holocaust deniers are strong, and it's a large percentage of people that don't believe the Holocaust ever happened, or don't really know that 6 million Jews were killed, and that they tried to annihilate a whole race of people is what they were trying to do. So Holocaust survivors are passing away. And we have a wonderful Holocaust survivor, Shelley Weiner. And she, I think you met her in my studio.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could just keep talking
She's
forever.
an amazing woman. And I know that she is part of the reason that she's doing that. And in fact, part of her, in a way, is in this monument.
Yes. She posed for the matriarchs, for the woman in the middle's hand, because Shelley is an example of women who survived, her aunt and her mother kept her alive as a 3-year-old underground in I think it was a potato cellar. First they were in one spot, then the other. And she has dedicated her life to Holocaust education. And this monument is in honor of her mother and her aunt.
And I should say, we actually have her on tape sharing her story, and we'll have that on GTN in 2022. So look for that for sure.
Yeah, that was an amazing story.
So women like her, are, their stories won't be here forever. So using a sculpture, a piece of artwork, as public art, it's placemaking. It's that art tells a story, it creates a community, and it creates a place to remember our past so that our future is different.
You got to have conversation, not just to remember, but to take action and to feel and to argue sometimes and to learn. I think all of that, right?
That Alan Johnson article that he wrote for the News and Record. Thank you, Alan Johnson, because that's what he spoke about, how our parks and our town squares should be places where we talk about these difficult subjects and where we also gather together to, whether it's under the Eichmann netted sculpture in LeBauer Park to protest against inequality and racism in Greensboro, or it's Carolyn's Garden, which will have a Holocaust memorial site where you can hear about the Holocaust, look at the sculpture of the women, look at it. There'll be a camera there where I'm encouraging people to look at the sculpture through this camera, that when they lift the lens, it says you are a witness. So it's proactive, because very often children or adults will learn about Holocaust history and they feel like, what can I do? And I say that you can see the sculpture and see them as human beings, as women, and know their story, and that's what you do. That's doing something. That's making a difference. That's fighting against intolerance by educating yourself and educating your children.
Okay. We kind of went into this a little bit, but so what are you hoping for that the sculpture will do for people who see it?
Exactly that. That it's, it is a monument, but really it's a Holocaust memorial sculpture. And, monuments are like up in the air, like they're these
untouchables.
Right, untouchables. But this one is going to be on the ground. You're going to be able to walk around it. I want you to relate to the little child whose arm is bent and you can see your child. I want you to relate to the woman in the middle who wouldn't take her boots off, the matriarch who's gathering these women. I mean, they're all arm in arm standing there. And I want you to think about in your life how you can how you can fight against racism and intolerance, and how when you see it in other places in our world that you react to it and that you speak of it and act differently and teach your children. I think teaching art to teach a a message, to tell a story is very powerful. It's a powerful way to teach.
Definitely. So, I'm always interested in the process.
Yes.
And this has been a long process. So you
Yes.
talked about your visit I guess it really started with your visit, your visit to LaPisha, to those, or not to LaPisha, but to Poland,
yeah.
and to see those camps. But what then, because then, we're talking years now. I mean, from
Yeah.
idea to
That's right.
actually beginning it, and we've gotten to follow a little bit of that, but kind of
Yes.
walk those listening through that.
Well, I started to bring the leaders of our community. I made a study, a maquette, which is a small study of the sculpture. The inspiration was a picture of these women, and then I made a sculpture, and I started to bring in the leaders of our community, from Nancy Hoffman to Kathy Manning, from the LeBauers to the Birkenhamels, from Zach Metheny to you, to tell them about this idea. What would you think about having a Holocaust memorial in Greensboro? And everyone resoundingly said, this is a city of social justice. One of the things that we really want to do in this city is to highlight injustice, inhumanity, and our struggle for civil rights in this city, and how it connects, how we're all the same human beings. So as I spoke to leaders and went around, everyone was very enthusiastic. So we set up an ad hoc committee of other leaders to kind of look at the idea. It was said, yes, let's go find a location in our parks. And we went to different locations in the downtown area. And God bless Greensboro, North Carolina, they decided that LeBauer Park, Carolyn LeBauer, who gave them money for that park, has a special little garden called Carolyn's Garden, and that would be a wonderful spot for this memorial. And I can't even tell you what that says about who our city is. That says so much about Greensboro. And so it went that was the choice of the location. Then it went to city council.
Yep, spring of 2020, I think.
Was it that long ago? Yeah, and then
I know, because
well, these things. If you
takes
read,
a while.
If you read about like Rodin and some of these great sculptors that I only that inspire me, is they took them 10 years to do this. It took them 15 years, and then they had all kinds of problems.
Of course.
So it's a big project, and then we had to raise funds. So I think that's probably one of your questions.
that was
So-
the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you recently received word from the state that they'd be funding this project?
Yeah, so not funding the whole project. It is a large project.
Okay.
It is a bronze sculpture of it's
5. Yeah.
You can tell I'm good with numbers. 5 women, and also the camera, which is the education part, as well as you go around the sculpture, it'll be a self-guided tour. So there will be locations where there'll be a QR code, and you'll hear about what is the Holocaust. You'll hear about these women of LaPisha. You'll hear Nancy Hoffman's story of her husband Jack, who was in the Kindertransport. You'll hear Shelley Weiner's story about her mother Ava, who kept her alive. You'll also hear a story about John Withers' father, John Withers Sr., who was an African American Army lieutenant I think he was a lieutenant. He was right
From Greensboro.
who liberated Dachau, one of the camps. Saw these survivors, particularly a 16
Boys.
and a 17-year-old boy, and said in his book, you have to read his book, they're like slaves. They're like, and he related to them, and his regiment adopted these 2 Holocaust survivors for a year.
Which was very dangerous.
Which was
against the
dangerous for them.
rules, right? Yeah.
Right, you read the book. I mean, the story. So his story will be also around the. He was in town last week, around the monuments. You can hear his story too. So part of the money that we were raising is also for education and to make sure that most of it's raised to actually build the sculpture because it's huge. So the city of John Hardister put out a bipartisan bill with.
Ashton Clemens.
Ashton Clemens and Michael Garrett, and it was accepted. And John worked really hard. I mean, he's amazing. And the state of North Carolina is giving us the women of the Shoah, who the nonprofit that's connected with the sculpture, the money for me to part of the building. So they're giving us $250,000.
That's exciting.
Which is incredible. Again, look at North Carolina, look at Greensboro, look at our leaders. I mean, I think it says a lot because look at all the sculptures that we need to take down. So here we're putting up something that is so positive.
So when will we see it? That's the big question, right?
Yes, when we see it. So, it's a lot of figures. Hopefully it'll go to the Foundry this summer. I'm using the North Carolina Foundry, which is in Seagrove. And it's this incredible, prestigious foundry that's like 45 minutes from where I live, which is like another miracle. And then it goes to the Foundry, and they have a schedule. So, with COVID and everything that's happening, it may take them up to a year.
Oh, wow.
But let's hope less. And then it gets installed with the QR codes and the camera all in that little petite little area in a very petite way. It's not
it's going to be intimate.
It'll be intimate.
A space for doing, for growing, for learning,
And the sculpture itself is larger than life size, but in an outdoor setting, it's going to feel more like life size, because with sculpture, if you do it too small, they look like dolls. And this had to have the gravitas of what was happening that day. It'll be a thing of beauty in terms of these women were beautiful women, and you're going to see these, but so it will be a thing of beauty, but it will also be a thing, a piece of artwork that you're going to want to stop and say, what's this? And read about it. Hopefully, I hope that people are drawn
and
in.
you'll connect to the women and children in the sculpture. Well, I know that if people are going to want to follow along, and on GTN, we're going to be continuing to do some stories with you as this process goes along, and we're just so proud that that's going to be here in Greensboro, and we just and are very grateful that you brought it to us and for us to be able to experience this. And you can learn more about it and get involved at womenoftheshoahjp.org. Check it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So stay tuned in weekly by subscribing to Talk City Greensboro on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And don't forget, you can download Talk City from SoundCloud. That's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Talk City. Be sure to watch GTN, your official source for news and information about the city of Greensboro. GTN is available on Spectrum, Channel 13,
AT&T Uverse, Channel 99,
and North State, Channel 31.
GTN also streams live on Roku and the city's website at
Greensboro-NC.gov.